You have not enough minerals.
There was a lot we could do there. And so we focused on how do we build
You have not enough minerals. Your warriors have engaged the enemy.
the most advanced, fastest, ARM-based CPU server chip for our customers. And we did that with our server chip called Graviton 2, which is allowing our customers to actually improve their performance by about 40%. At about a 20% reduction in cost. We know how important performance and cost reduction are for customers, and so bringing that to AWS has allowed customers to bring their workloads and just be able to do more at a lower cost.
Now, you're not just making chips for servers, but also, as I understand it, voice recognition, graphics, AI, machine learning, and as you've said, you've proven you're pretty good at it. Does that mean that Alexa and our Kindles will have Amazon design chips as well?
Oh, likely over time, absolutely. You know, we actually started our custom silicon journey back in 2010. And so this is not just something we've done recently. It's something we realized we had to do as a cloud provider in the very early days of AWS. We actually purchased a chip manufacturing company called Annapurna Labs back in 2014. And they've built no fewer than 11 different chips for us today. So that's the server chip in Graviton. We do have chips in the machine learning space with Inferentia and Cranium that are coming out. And it's very likely that you continue to see us innovate in this space, as long as it makes sense for our customers, which is what we're always looking at. How do we improve our customer experience? And that drives us.
Now, Google and Microsoft are also making their own chips and also have big cloud businesses. And I'm curious, how do you think your efforts compare to theirs, or how do you think your efforts give you an advantage over what they're doing?
Well, you know, we try not to, at Amazon, we try not to focus too much on what our competitors are doing, but stay focused on what customers are seeing. You know, we've been very early to the ARM game. As I said, we started back in 2010. We worked very closely with ARM over the last number of years. And we put out our first ARM chip actually back in 2018. And really actually sparked an ecosystem. We signaled to the market that an ARM server chip was available in the cloud. And we've just seen customers like Snap with their Snapchat application, seeing customers like Honeycode.io, and even our own Alexa start using this custom silicon. And it's growing from small startups to large enterprises. And so I guess the one advantage we have, it's available today. And we've seen customers like Twitter even decide to choose AWS as their primary cloud provider because the goal of moving more and more of their workloads to ARM. And so it's available today on AWS for customers to use, and we're going to continue innovating in this space with what we've built massively built internally to be able to build this custom silicon.
So clearly this is more than just a side hustle or a hobby. Do you think that this is something you could turn into an external business and sell Amazon designed chips to other companies?
Well, right now we're really focused on what chips do we have to bring into our cloud environment, and we do have the ability to put some of these chips into customer data centers as well. Through our post-programming we can bring in AWS TU. Over time, I guess it's interesting to see where it will go. It's difficult to know where we'll be in 5 years' time or how innovation will take us or what customer demand is going to be. So I certainly wouldn't say no to that question, but it's not something we're currently planning.
Now, your CEO, Jeff Bezos, weighed in positively on President Biden's infrastructure plan, and there's this big chip summit happening in Washington next week. If there's one thing the administration could do that you believe would help the industry, what would that be?
Well, I think there's also a lot of focus right now in supply chain and making sure that we have enough chips. On the Amazon side, we've been innovating in our supply chain. It's kind of in the DNA of what Amazon does. So obviously making sure that there's enough chips available for demand is critically important. We're actually very confident in where we are from a supply chain point of view at this point in time. And we've been able to withstand things like we had in COVID last year with an incredible demand on cloud capacity. But obviously making sure that we have the necessary supply and whatever we can do there would be critical for everyone.
All right, Jake Brown, Vice President at Amazon, thank you so much for joining us. Really interesting to hear more about the work you're doing there and work to come. All right, still ahead. We're going to speak to the CEO of Global Foundries, Tom Caulfield, who will be attending President Biden's Chip Summit next week. His thoughts on the competition with TSMC and Samsung and when the chip shortage will be over. This is Bloomberg Technology, Chip Crunch.
Bloomberg has enhanced search on the terminal to deliver what you need when you need it. Now, you can simply type phrases in everyday English in the command line. Compare financials. Find people. Analyze markets. You can enter phrases or ask questions. What do you want to know today? Ask a question or visit SearchGo to find answers now.
I'm David Weston. Bloomberg Television is reinventing one of the most iconic brands in financial television for a new audience. Join me to see the news program for the clever investor. This is Bloomberg Wall Street Week.
Welcome back to a special Bloomberg Technology Chip Crunch. When it comes to the foundry business, the business of making chips for other companies, manufacturers in Taiwan and South Korea dominate TSMC and Samsung, leading the charge. In the U.S., it's UMC and Global Foundries, the top players. To compete on the global stage, Global Foundries says it's committed to expanding production in the U.S., Europe, and Singapore. Joining us now for more, Global Foundries CEO himself, Tom Caulfield. Tom, thank you so much for joining us. So I would love to hear what it's like from your vantage point. How hard is it right now to keep up with demand?
Well, first, Emily, thank you for having me here today. I think how we got ourselves in this position of this big shortage is really a journey that started about 15 years ago with the advent of the smartphone. We started to see that a compute-centric industry, that was one that went to the smallest and tiniest transistors to do compute function only, started to evolve to, wow, look at all the features we could put in devices. We could put a touch screen. We could put secure transactions so we can do pay remotely from the cash register. We could put audio chips. We could use our phone to take pictures. We have a touch screen that is easier to manipulate features on the phone. We have power management chips to make the battery last longer. And all of a sudden, this industry went from a compute-centric mindset, we went down kind of scaling Moore's Law, to pervasive deployment of semiconductors. And by the way, that's where GF plays. All those functions I described is where we make chips for our customers, 250 of them strong. We make them worldwide. And so what really happened was the beginning of that journey 15 years ago from a compute-centric industry to a pervasive compute became accelerated. You know, the unfortunate pandemic in 2020 really had technology adoption that normally would take a decade happened essentially in a year. And not only are more devices being sold, more content of semiconductors go in each device. And so we entered the pandemic with the industry thinking we had a 5% growth, where today, looking out, the industry for the next 5 years has a 9% growth. And as you've heard earlier in your program, putting capacity on is not something you just do in a week. By the minute you say go, and I'm going to order equipment, a company like GF, it's probably a year out before we can produce just the wafers, not even the final product for our customers. We have to buy the equipment, install the equipment, qualify the equipment, and then begin production. And so this shortage is going to be with us well into 2022. I don't think the demand is perishable.
Now, you will be attending the CHIP Summit at the White House next week. What is the one thing that you would like President Biden to do?